Being a student nowadays can be pretty tough. Whether you're paying for living, tuition, gas, a metro pass, or just partying, everything seems to cost more than what we have. And without some kind of financial aid, be it from parents or loved ones, or from the government and other institutions, some, if not all of us, would not be sitting in this class right now. The amount of students that apply for student loans seems to increase each year. On average, almost half of Canadian students receive some sort of financial aid. So I decided to do my final speech on OSAP and other government financial aids in Canada. In this speech, I'll be covering its history, its current status, and how it can be improved. So the Dominion Provincial Student Loan Program was established in 1939 as the first student loan program in Canada. It was created in order to assist students pursuing a post-secondary education but didn't necessarily have the proper funds to do so. In 1964, it then changed its name to the Canadian Student Loan Program, and until 1995, the way it worked was that students received their loans from financial institutions, loans that the students would have to eventually pay back. In the meantime, the government would reimburse the institution with the money loaned out. In 1995, several things changed. The Canada Student Financial Assistance Act came into place, which put restrictions on the amount the government and institution could exchange with each other. Therefore, after some years of tweaking, as of August 1st, 2000, the government became directly in charge of loaning the money. The loans then fell into the responsibility of the NSLCS, or National Student Loan Service Center. The NSLCS breaks off into two categories of loans: private institutions and public institutions. Today, all student loans are managed by the Canada Revenue Agency. Now, with the creation of the CSLP and the Financial Assistance Act coming into place, provincial governments decided to set up their own student loan program if they wanted to. Ours is known as OSAP, the Ontario Student Assistance Program. So, we all know more or less what OSAP is and how everyone can apply for it, but how good is it exactly? I myself, being an OSAP user, have to say I don't like it. The concept of the government loaning you money interest-free is great, but the problem is that like any other loan, it has to be paid back eventually. The interest on OSAP starts after 6 months of finishing school. So be it through graduating or leaving partway through your program, in 6 months you'll have to have paid back everything you received, or your monthly interest will add up. So by that logic, if a student goes to Guelph Humber and pays roughly $6,000 a year, by the time they graduate, they will have needed $24,000 just for tuition. Then you have the price of books, transportation, a place to live, utilities, food, and of course, partying. You could easily be looking at another $24,000 right there. So if a student had to completely rely on loans, they would have to make almost $50,000 in 4.5 years from when they got accepted. I haven't even made $50,000 throughout my life working, and I've had a part-time job since I was 11. We've all heard stories and seen news features on students who are in debt after graduating and stay in debt for a long time after. It's too unrealistic to possibly make such a high amount of money while still trying to maintain a solid average. There's also a rising issue with how much OSAP actually gives out. On March 9th of this year, the Gazette, a newspaper organized by the University of Western, wrote an article on 5 Huron college students. The students argue that the 2009-10 OSAP plan only gives out $1,045 for living expenses for a single student living away from home. This is supposed to cover food, shelter, transportation, and miscellaneous. So according to their math, this leaves $7.50 a day for food, which then averages out to only $2.50 a meal. The students are protesting by going on what they call an OSAP diet to get their point across. Because honestly, $2.50 a meal, unless all you want are 3 square meals of junior cheeseburgers or small fries at McDonald's, that's not a whole lot of money. So, what can be changed? For one, how about an extension on the debt? Every time I think about how much money I have to pay for school, I get a little sad. And I get even sadder when I realize I'm only halfway there and I'm going to need a lot more money to get through it. When I'm done school, I'm going to want to celebrate the fact that I finally made it. It's going to be pretty hard when I know I owe the government money. And the fact that I have to make all in 6 months is going to suck. I'm basically going to have to resort to paying crazy interest fees or prostitution, which should totally be legalized, by the way. Therefore, the deadline for payment should be extended based on the amount that was actually loaned out. So for example, if the student had $5,000 to pay back, they should have 6 months. But if the student had $50,000 to pay back, give like 4 years or something more reasonable. I mean, logically, we're all tax-paying citizens. The government knows where to find us, and they're not going to be running out of money anytime soon. What's the hurry to get their money back? University students can't be expected to work off debt their way through school. There have been studies that prove that a student's marks can suffer if they work excessively, meaning more than 20 hours a week. In most cases, students will pay more attention to one than the other or struggle to find a balance in both. I, for example, work at a warehouse when I'm lifting on average 30-pound boxes for 8 hours at a time. After those shifts, I have to say it's pretty hard to wake up for class the next morning. Not that everyone necessarily works at a warehouse, but the reason I do is because it pays better, and the reason I need the money is to pay for school, so it's like a vicious cycle. Another thing is the amount that is actually given out. Again, I only use myself as an example, but the same concept can apply to any of you in here. I received just over $4,000 for the school year. I have to pay for my entire tuition, my cell phone bills, my rent, my Metro Pass, and my partying, and they didn't cover tuition. And they didn't even cover tuition. It's ridiculous. I obviously couldn't afford to pay for the tuition this semester, so I ended up having to pay back my dad, who hassles me just as much as a credit card company. But the plus side is there's no interest. So, now that we all know a little more about the four-letter acronym OSAP, let's try to change it. Write to our members of parliament and members of provincial parliament. We're a generation that is evolving within a very changing technological environment. The leaders of today are going to need us to take over in the future. Why should we get shafted on such an important thing like education? The 5 students in the article are just examples of students who need to get their voice heard. Getting an education should be a much more comfortable and realistically manageable process.